Cool, cool. All right, why don't we go ahead and start? I wanted to let everyone know that this is my amazing daughter, Meleah. She is just the most wonderful person I know. I'm so grateful to her. When I think of Meleah, I think of wisdom, I think of joy, and absolute compassion. And she's a professional counselor and just spends her days helping people. And I asked her to talk to us about fear and anxiety because I think that's something we can always benefit from, but I think right now, probably even more so. So thank you so much, Meleah. Take it away.
All right. So hi, everybody. My name is Meleah, like he was saying. Good to see some familiar faces. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and so I do talk about anxiety for many of my days. So familiar and happy to talk about this topic today. I'm going to be using the words anxiety, fear, worry, all interchangeably today. Anxiety is the most common mental illness in the U.S. 40 million adults struggle and experience anxiety. Whether you have anxiety or not, I'm sure that you're familiar with fear and worry. So I wondered, just before we get going today, if you guys would feel comfortable either sharing or just putting in the chat maybe one of your common fears or situations that provoke anxiety for you. And if you don't feel comfortable doing that, no worries, but I'll just give you a moment to do that now. All right, see some coming through. Every time I do this in a group setting, I always, or not always, most of the time there's some overlap with things. Even if they don't look just the same, there's typically a lot of overlap in the situations that provide anxiety. Thanks, Vanessa. Definitely share that one with my father. Thanks a lot. Maybe it's inherited. Yes. All right. Thank you so much for sharing. Anxiety, there's a common quote that says comparison is the thief of joy. I definitely think that that's true, but I also think anxiety is the thief of joy. I really think that anxiety robs us of joy and from being present and just participating in our lives. So I think that it's important to first kind of identify how anxiety negatively impacts us in order for us to develop the motivation to really work against anxiety. So as I'm talking, if you guys will just sort of be thinking about like some of the situations that you were just providing, different areas of your life where worry creeps in and where it really just takes over and stops you from enjoying your daily life. The tricky thing about anxiety is that it really kind of presents as your friend. It really makes you think, you know, I'm going to help you. I'm going to keep you safe. I'm going to protect you. And that is one of the hardest things about dealing with anxiety is we don't like to feel unsafe. I know someone put like fear of the unknown. Fear of the unknown is one of the biggest triggers for feeling unsafe. And so we really want to grasp onto anything that makes us feel like we have any little inkling of control in our lives. Even though logically we know we really do not have very much control, anxiety wants to say, hey, if you'll just listen to me, I'll give you that control that you want. And so if you will, just think about areas of your life where you worry and maybe convince yourself that your worry is actually working on something. Because I think that's one of anxiety's most common ploys is that as long as I'm thinking on this, as long as I am worrying about it, I'm working towards a solution. I really find that to be not true at all. In my own experience and in the clients that I work with, anxiety does nothing but cloud our thinking, our judgment. You know, it really hurts our perspective. And so I think that it's really important just to examine how anxiety hurts us and hinders just our daily functioning. I'm going to bring up, well, I'm going to bring up a couple slides because I think two of the things that fuel anxiety the most are overthinking and avoidance. So wanted to just kind of try to give a few practical tools today on different ways where you can take some power back in those two areas. So I'm going to start by just looking at a little cycle of anxiety. So I'm going to try to share my screen with you. So please let me know if we have any problems. All right. Able to see that okay?
Yes, it's on there. It's great.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so this is the cycle of anxiety. This is from therapistaid.com. It's one of my favorite go-to websites for grabbing some good resources. It is paid, but it is pretty inexpensive if you really want some good tools to work on your mental health. So anxiety-producing situations lead to uncomfortable symptoms such as worry, fear, racing heart, sweating, or a feeling of being overwhelmed. So anxiety is highly uncomfortable. We do not like to feel this way. I'm sure you guys, as you're thinking of your anxiety-provoking situations, are also able to recall the uncomfortable physical symptoms that go along with that. So that leads us to step number 2, which is avoidance. Avoidance is uncomfortable symptoms are controlled by avoiding the anxiety-producing situations. Examples of avoidance include skipping class to avoid giving a presentation, using drugs or alcohol to numb feelings, procrastinating on challenging tasks. I think there's a lot of avoidance also socially that's worth mentioning. I think that we will avoid situations that might make us uncomfortable, like saying hello to someone, different things like that, just to try to keep ourselves feeling more comfortable and to try to avoid those pesky physical symptoms that seem to accompany our anxiety. The downside/upside of avoidance is that you get short-term relief from anxiety. And this is where the tricky part of anxiety comes into play, because avoidance of the anxiety-producing situation gives an immediate sense of relief. The symptoms of anxiety lessen, but only temporarily. But because we get that short-term relief, we really do feel like, oof, dodged a bullet. I'm so glad I didn't do that. And that really strengthens the long-term anxiety growth, because every time we avoid something, I hope you can see my hands, but it's like you run into a wall and turn around. And each time you do that, the size of that wall just continues to grow until it really feels like something that you're incapable of. So it makes you think it's helping you because you feel better, but really it's just taking your power from you and just kind of instilling this belief that you weren't capable. So long-term anxiety growth is the fear that initially led to avoidance worsens, and the brain learns that when anxiety-producing situation is avoided, the symptoms go away. As a result, the symptoms of anxiety will be worse the next time, and avoidance is more likely. So I thought I'd just use like a social situation, because I think that a lot of people sometimes will avoid things socially, like I mentioned. So we'll say shopping at Target, and you see a casual acquaintance at the end of the aisle. And you think, I could say hello to that person. But then you start to think, what if it's awkward? What if that's not them? I think it is, but they have their mask on, so I can't tell. Maybe I'll just, and then you zip out of the aisle. Whew, I feel relieved. I didn't have to do that social interaction. That felt better. But the next time I see that person or another casual acquaintance, I will be much more likely to avoid saying hello. And then, of course, there are long-term consequences for that. You don't develop relationships. You don't feel comfortable in your own skin, communicating with people. Anytime you get a sense of I have to hide, I have to run, that's a really good indication that anxiety is present. So just wanted to kind of show you guys the cycle. And then the tool that I like the most is for this one. It's called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it's the 5-second rule, but you count down from 5. And it's from Mel Robbins. There's a good TED Talk on this tool if you'd like to watch that at any point. But it's very simple. It basically just says you only give yourself 5 seconds to take an action. Let me go ahead and get rid of this screen for now. All right. So you only give yourself 5 seconds to take an action. That way your thoughts can't talk you out of it. Because typically what happens is just like I ran through those examples, is we begin to think, oh no, what if that's not her name? What if that's not her? What if it's awkward? What if I can't think of anything to say? And that just completely you get in your head, you get awkward, then you are more likely to act a little awkward with them and to feel uncomfortable throughout the whole interaction. So that 5 seconds is you see someone or you want to do something and you go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, take an action. So you might not always take the action that you feel best about. Your action sometimes might be zipping out of that aisle, but hopefully sometimes that action is more likely to be, I'm going to talk to her, or I'm going to get up and go for that run, or I'm going to give this presentation. It's just a really good way to stop that thinking, that little fake protector up there, from interfering and getting in your way. So that's one of my favorite tools for avoidance. Another tool that I want to discuss today is for that overthinking piece, because sometimes we can't turn off the thoughts. It's really nice if the thoughts will if we're able to set those internal boundaries and not have to deal with the overthinking. But a lot of times it cycles, we ruminate, we can't seem to turn it off. And that's a good indication that it might be time to dig a little deeper and actually challenge the thoughts. Some thoughts are just kind of situational worries that just zip away pretty quickly, but some are more like our negative core beliefs, the beliefs we have about ourselves or about the world, and those we need to bring into focus and challenge and try to find some more balanced ways of thinking. So I'm going to share my screen with you again. All right, and so these are just 4 questions that I find to be the most useful with challenging our thinking. And so this is sort of adapted from the work of Byron Katie, who I really like. She has a system of turning around beliefs and thoughts and challenging them, but it can be sort of complex. And so I found this adapted system and I liked it even more. So it begins with the first question is it true? So first you're going to identify a belief. Then you're going to ask yourself, is it true? Sometimes after that question, we're going to say, it could be, I don't know, maybe. So that's why we have the second question, which is, can I absolutely know that it's true? That leads us to the third question. What's the opposite of my belief? So then you're just going to absolutely just like turn the belief on its head, list out what the opposite of your belief would be. And then you're going to list 3 reasons the opposite belief could be true. Hopefully this will lead you to a more balanced perspective. So I thought I'd do one with COVID, just since that's something that we're all, dealing maybe with some anxiety about, but it's definitely just in our realm, in our world right now. So I thought maybe an example would be you wake up with a scratchy throat and then you have the thought, I have COVID. And so then I would want you to ask yourself, is it true? Well, maybe. I've read online that, scratchy throats often are one of the first symptoms of COVID. Can I absolutely know that it's true? No, I haven't taken a test. I don't have any other symptoms, so no, I can't absolutely know it's true. What is the opposite of my belief? I don't have COVID. List 3 reasons the opposite belief could be true. I've experienced common colds before, a lot of times accompanied by a scratchy throat. That's my only symptom right now. It's allergy season. So then that challenging, hopefully, will just create a little bit more balanced perspective that decreases that anxiety, gives you a better kind of zoomed out perspective so that you're able to deal with your situation. Because that's not to say that symptoms wouldn't worsen and you would need to go get a test, but a lot of times anxiety is all about jumping ahead. It never just deals with the present moment and with the scratchy throat. It says worst case scenario. Oh my gosh, next I'm going to stop breathing, next this is going to happen. And then we're actually reacting to our thoughts rather than the actual situation. Wondered if anyone had an anxiety-provoking situation or belief that they would be willing or would want to use this little system on to challenge today. They can verbalize it and I'll type it out for us. And if no one feels comfortable doing that, that's completely fine.
Did you say verbalize it or type it in the chat?
If you'll verbalize it, I can just kind of type it out in the notes right here so we can look at it.
Okay. Anybody want to do one?
I'm sorry, I missed part of it, Meleah. I apologize. I spaced for a second. What would you like first to share? What thought?
If
Like,
anyone has, yeah, it's just kind of a worry, a future thinking belief system, something that causes them some anxiety, or a negative belief about yourself. You know, a lot of times I'm not good at my job. You know, different things like that will be things that kind of haunt us and follow us around, causing anxiety.
I'm happy to do one, but I'd much rather give someone else a chance if they want to.
I have an idea, but I don't want to freak anybody out.
You won't freak us out.
Yeah, whatever your comfort zone is.
This is a very safe place.
So, okay, so a worry of mine is, and this is a weird thought that popped into my head last night with all the stuff that's going on with the elections. I had this weird thought, and I thought, with all the accusations of voter fraud and all this kind of stuff, I thought to myself, what if there actually was voter fraud, like on a large scale? What if?
Okay.
I was like, how would I, because I mean, I don't, you know, I was like, oh my gosh, because that would change a lot of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that is weird or going to freak anyone out at all. I think that with all the information we're taking in right now from all the different sources, that's a, you know, really common worry or belief to have. So let's use that one. I think it would be perfect. So it's really easy.
Court documents, but
okay. So sometimes it's easier to challenge a belief if we make it kind of concrete. So I'm just going to turn, even though you said, what if it's true? You already sound a little more balanced. We'll take it to an extreme and we'll just say voter fraud is happening. And then I'll ask you the first question. Is it true?
Are you wanting me to answer that?
Yes, if you would. Yeah. Is it true?
Well, there's always going to be some, always. There's always uncertainty, and there's always errors, and there's always mistakes, and there's always people that are dishonest. So yes.
Okay. All right. So that sounds like definitely could be, definitely possible.
Yeah, it's definitely plausible.
Yes, definitely plausible. What about, can I absolutely know it's true?
Not unless they catch somebody.
Okay. So not right now. What is and maybe we should even take it a little more extreme and say, because you're right, there's so much room for things to go on right now. It might be voter fraud determines the election, or voter fraud is something like that might be a little bit easier belief to work with. But then we'll just go with, what is the opposite of my belief? What's the opposite of your fear?
That I guess that it's not happening.
Okay. And again, we could even intensify these if we need to, like voter fraud's not happening on a big scale. You know, it's not happening to a point where it could determine an election. Whatever feels like the best fit for you. And then are you able, and it's okay if you can't, but just come up with as many as you can, to list 3 reasons that this opposite belief could be true, that voter fraud's not happening?
Like 3 reasons that it's not happening. Y'all help me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this definitely can be a group project.
I don't know.
They haven't found any evidence.
Just evidence? I mean,
mm-hmm.
That's the obvious.
Yes, and that, I can't see who's speaking right now, but just want to say that is perfect, because what we always want to do when we're looking at our beliefs is try to look for evidence. Look, what is evidence that I can present in a court of law? Because our anxiety is so tricky. We really want to say, what are my facts for and against? So right now, we do not have evidence. It's perfect.
Yeah, so I guess we don't have empirical evidence, really.
Yes, we do not have empirical evidence.
So excuse me, I would say that the leading experts, who really know these things and study them objectively, say we had the safest election, one of the safest we've ever had in this country. and that both parties, both members of both parties in the states, have affirmed how safe and accurate the elections were.
All right, that's a great piece of evidence.
Definitely.
And of course, these are, just going to depend on what information you have. And sometimes it might even take you doing a little bit of digging to find your information too. Can you guys think of one more? Those are two really good pieces so far.
I've got one, I think,
Okay.
Vanessa. Both parties won in different races.
Ah,
Sure.
absolutely. Thank you, Vanessa.
I kind of like that I flipped it. It actually works better.
Perfect. So when you kind of look at the opposite belief, and when you think of these three reasons that it could not be true, how would you say that that impacts your worry or anxiety?
Well,
Calmer and more reduced. Sorry, that's me.
yeah, it's kind of like a release valve. It really is.
Absolutely. That's perfect. And that's what we're looking for. I certainly, don't expect for your thoughts and your anxiety to go from extreme to non-existent. We're looking just for balance. We just want to our brains are just wired for negativity. They're wired for worry. I don't know why they're made that way, but that is how they function. So we want to do our part to bring in that positive side, to bring in that opposite perspective, to create that balance, because our brain is just not skilled when it comes to taking in opposite info and really creating balance. Thank you so much for participating in that. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
Hey, Meleah, can I say something, ask you to sort of use this subject as an example?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, like I said, I mean, the reports are that there was, no widespread fraud of any kind. But isn't this an example of how fear actually works? Like, you're hearing that somebody's telling you something, and in our case, it's probably in our minds, but somebody's telling you something that's true that actually flies against logic or flies against what you know or what you've believed or what has been true. And yet you're just assaulted with it. So you begin to question, or you begin to wonder, you begin to doubt your, where you were before and what to do.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that is really how fear functions. Our brain, it doesn't really need a lot to run on because we have such great imaginations, and there is such just a variety of information available to us. We have more information available at our fingertips than anyone ever has. So we have to help our brains more than any previous generation ever has, because it can find, it can see a headline and it can just run away with that. So yes, absolutely. So I'd love to do one more thing with you guys, if you are comfortable with it. And then we can just save a little bit of time to talk at the end. But one of the therapies that I do is called EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It is like my favorite therapy in the world. It's really good for any kind of anxiety disorder, works really well with trauma. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to process any trauma on our Zoom call today, but I did want to give you the chance to establish what's called a safe place. This is one of the first steps that we take when doing EMDR, just sort of the resource, that first phase that we do before we get into any of the nitty gritty, is to just set up some safe things and safe places for your brain to go during the processing. And EMDR uses bilateral stimulation. That just means that you are activating both hemispheres of the brain by crossing the central line of your body. And so what we're going to do is called like a happy place on steroids, essentially. And so I'll walk you through it, but just so you know what you're headed into, so you can decide if you want to try it, is I'm just going to have you close your eyes, picture a safe place, a place where you feel very safe. I'm going to walk you through a series of questions, and I'm going to have you cross your arms across your body like this, and you're just going to slowly tap back and forth to create that bilateral stimulation. And all this does is it activates both hemispheres of the brain and really helps the brain sense and feel what you're thinking about and describing. And it will make it easier to access next time you want to. So you don't have to do these taps every time. We'll just do them for the installation. And then next time, if you're feeling stressed or feeling anxious, you can just go to your safe place. And hopefully it'll be much easier to tap into because we installed it just with some tapping bilateral stimulation. So if you'd like to, totally don't have to, Just go ahead and get comfortable and close your eyes. And think of a place where you feel completely safe. I recommend that only you are in this place in your mind's eye, because if we bring in other people, that can tend to mess up our safety or peace. This can be a place you've been before, but it also can be a place that you want to imagine. Some people want it, to go somewhere in nature they've never been. It's completely up to you. So go ahead and just take yourself to that place where you feel peaceful. Go ahead and cross your arms across your body. And I want you to begin by just noticing what you see around you as you slowly tap back and forth. Perfect. Now if you'll just go ahead and imagine what you would be hearing and feeling. So what the temperature might be, what might be beneath your feet, or if you're sitting on something, and then also the sounds that would be around you in this place. And just continue tapping back and forth. Perfect. Now, if each of you will pick out a word or phrase that represents this place for you. So it can be something as simple as peace, safety, but it can also be the name of the place. There's no right or wrong here. And now I just want you to hold in your mind your place along with the word or phrase that you've selected, and do one more set of tapping. Perfect. Okay, you can all open your eyes. And we're just going to test out your safe place. So I want you to all just to yourself, just think of a situation that would evoke an unpleasant emotion. So it doesn't even have to be anxiety. It can be frustration. A lot of people like to use traffic. But this would be like on a 0 to 10 scale. I want you to just come up with something that might be like a 2 or 3 as far as how much it bothers you. So think of that situation. Try to let a little bit of that, whatever the unpleasant feeling is, bubble up inside of you. Notice how you feel. And you can do this at your own pace. But once you feel like you have that, I want you to go ahead and close your eyes and aloud or to yourself, say your word and spend a moment in your place and just see if you notice any change in state as far as how you're feeling. Perfect. Thank you all so much for doing that. Would anyone like to share if they noticed a change in state or where they chose to establish their safe place? No problem if not. The more that you practice your safe place, the more likely it is to work for you. So I definitely encourage you, just if you can, spend a few moments in your place every day, and that will make it easier and easier to drop into that place when you need it. Your body will respond more and more quickly. Like I said, you don't have to use the bilateral stimulation, but if you want to, feel free by all means. A lot of people like what are called butterfly taps, and so that's where you start with your hands out, and then you do 1 finger, 2 finger, 3 finger, 4 finger, thumb, all the way down, and you just do that a few times. You can also do like a comforting gesture like that while you're in your place, and that can really just calm down the parasympathetic nervous system, help you feel peaceful. Wanted to give you just a couple more recommendations. I think the most useful tool for fear and anxiety is not to actually deal with it once it happens, but to be proactive about it and incorporate things in your life that make you more likely, if you had a thermometer, to be at a 0 throughout your day, rather than starting your day at a 4 and easily escalating to a 5. And so what I mean by that, I would start my day with mindfulness meditation, because I think that that is the most useful tool for decreasing anxiety and fear. It really does slow down the brain's reactivity. There is study after study that just shows the positive impact of meditation. If you're not familiar, mindfulness just means to be actively present in the moment. So it's just being intentional about doing whatever you're doing. You don't always have to be sitting on a mat, you know, with your and your fingers like this, although you definitely can be. You can be doing a puzzle. You can be doing a crossword. You can be painting, but you just want to make sure that whatever you're doing, you're doing. Because it's very easy to be putting together a puzzle and thinking about your week's schedule. And when you notice that, you want to just bring your attention back to the present moment and say, no, I need this piece. No, I need this piece. And that'll help the brain just to remain present. I love to do a formal practice. I'm just using an app. There are some really good apps available. Calm is a really good app. They have a free and paid version. Love that app and all the meditations they offer. But also Insight Timer is completely free. They have like 65,000 free meditations. So if you want to start the free route and see how you like it, it is just like an incredible resource. And I love using both of those apps. So just wanted to suggest those to you. And then I just wanted to save a few minutes for any questions. I think we have like about 5 minutes before we're going to get kicked off. So does anyone have anything that they would like to say or ask before we close out for today?
Hey, let me just say this. We have 2 minutes left, just so you know. So anybody.
Cool.
Awesome, Meleah. Thank you so much. And I was going to say, I definitely felt just a reduction and a calmness going to that place. I really appreciate your suggestions very much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Vanessa. I'm so glad.
I do have this little quote that helps me. I think Michael J. Fox said it. It said, if I worry about the worst case scenario happening, and even if it does happen, all I've done is lived it twice.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that. I absolutely love that and 100% agree with it. Unfortunately, it seems like we typically live it like 100 times, and then we might live it the one actual time, or more likely we live it 100 times and then never actually live it. But you are 100% right. That is why our mind can just like really torture us if we allow it to. Thank you. Well, thank you guys so much for joining. Just really appreciate your feedback and your willingness to participate. And if you have any questions about any of the tools that I mentioned or resources today, feel free just to reach out to Dad, and I'd be happy to supply you with any kind of links or anything just having to do with what we talked about. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Meleah. That was amazing. Like you. Sure appreciate it. Everybody, see you here back at 2 for our next session, and looking forward to it. Thank you, Meleah.